Morning. Learning as a schutz for Shlema for Ilana Chaya Basarach and for Basti and Baschaya. We are on Daf Tzadi Vav. Are we on Tzadi Vav Amud Aleph? Yeah. Tzadi Vav Amud Aleph. By the Mishnah in the middle of the Amud. Zok the Mishnah. Hanoitel Gin Hanosha. Tzarech She'itel is Kulai. We had discussed before, the Gin Hanosha is a sinu. It's a string that goes through the thigh of the animal, but it actually sits on top of the muscle or the basar. So this is the mandama, which we said before. This is Rameir actually, who says before, when you take out the geranasha, you don't just take out the sign who's sitting on top of the kaf yarech. Right? The pasuk says, "Al kin le'yechlu b'nei Yisrael is geranasha." They don't eat this signu. Asher al kaf hayarech, that sits on the spoon of flesh. So it's like a muscle of the thigh, and it sits on top of that muscle. He says you got to go and dig out all the little tendrils, the branches that go off of the giranosha and go into the basar. You have to go and dig it all out. Rabbi Yehuda by mitzvahs natila. Rabbi Yehuda says no. You have to just take out. The Torah says you got to take it out, and that's all you have to do. You don't have to do more than take off the giranasha that's sitting on top of the muscle. Zok the Mishnah, ha'oichel mi giranasha kazayis seifeg arba. If you eat from the giranasha, the giranasha could be 10 kazayisim. If you eat a kazayis of that, you get malchus. Achlu ve'ein by kazayis chai. However, if you ate the entire giranasha, and the entire giranasha, even though you ate the whole thing, it's less than a kazayis, you're still going to be chayiv. Like we're going to see later on, this man the Amar holds that that it's a beria. If it's a entire object, it doesn't need to be a kazayis, right? Just like we say, if you eat a bug, if you eat an ant, even though it's less than a kazayis, you're chayiv. The same thing with the giranasha. If you eat the entire giranasha, you're chayiv. If someone was eating from the two giranoshas of an animal has two legs, two thighs. These are the back thighs, right? The hind legs. So if he ate from the giranasha of the right thigh as well as from the left thigh, so he gets two sets of malchus, one for each. One for the left and one for the right. We know Rabbi Yehuda says in the end. Rabbi Yehuda comes out that it has to be the right. Only the right thigh is a giranasha. The left side is not a giranasha. So he says the left side he wasn't over anything. He's only over for eating the right side. Bar Piuli, this person named Bar Piuli, maybe he was a butcher. Have a koi kaimei de Shmuel. He was in front of Shmuel. The kamenaker atma. Atma is a thigh. So he was taking out the giranasha. He was removing the giranasha from the thigh of an animal. Havaka gomle. And he was doing it in the manner described in the Mishnah by Rabbi Yehuda. He cut off the thigh, the gid, from on top of the basar. Amalei chavis beitvei. Shmuel said, you got to take out more than that. You got to dig into the basar, like the Tanakh said, like Rameir said. Hashtalois chazichas afisa li surah. He said, and Shmuel said, had I not been watching you, you would have fed me non-kosher meat. You would have fed me the giranasha, because the giranasha includes that which is embedded in the meat. Irsus. This Bar Piuli got scared. Shmuel was the Gadol Adar, and he was yelling at him, and he got scared that he was mad at him. Nafal sakina miyadei. The knife fell from his hand out of his fear. Amalei leitersas. Don't be afraid. I'm not accusing you of being of saying something crazy that you're not knowledgeable. Da'irelach Rabbi Yehuda Da'irelach. You had heard a psak like Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, that's you had that's what you learned. But I paskin not like that. I paskin like Rameir, and therefore the entire basar you have to remove all of the giranasha. Amar of Sheshes. Sheshes said, "My deshakal bar piyule de araisel Rabbi Yehuda." That which bar piyuli took out, meaning just the actual gid, not this parts that spread into the basar. That's only asa midaraisa. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that's the deraisa part. That's mashma. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to remove the part, something else, midrabanan. That doesn't make any sense, right? Shmuel told this Bar Piuli, don't feel bad, you paskin like someone else. But the way Rav Sheshes says it, it sounds like he's saying Bar Piuli took out the deraisa part according to Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda will be maskim that midrabanan you have to take out an additional part, which is the parts that go into the basar. So then Bar Piuli wasn't really paskening you have to follow the Rabbanan also. So how could Shmuel have told Bar Piuli, oh, you didn't do something bad, you paskin like someone else? For Yehuda holds it's awesome in the Rabbanan, he wouldn't have said that you didn't do anything wrong. Elam Rav Sheshes, so we say that this member of Rav Sheshes was slightly different. My deshakal Bar Piuli, the Raisa the Rameir, my Deshai the Rabbanan, Lirameir. I'm sorry. My Deshakal Bar Piuli the Raisa, let me look up the Hagoyes Abach. The Raisa Lirameir, right? My Deshire the Rabbanan Lirameir. That which Bar Piuli took is midaraisa required to be removed according to Rameir. Even Rameir, who's the Tanakama of our Mishnah, says you have to dig into the meat and remove the tendrils, the branches of the Gid Nosha from it. That's not required midaraisa. Midaraisa, all you have to do is take off the actual Gid itself. And that which Bar Piuli left over, that's only asa midrabanan. Even Rameir, the machol machlokes between Rameir and Rabbi Yehuda is on the Rabbanan. Midaraisa, they both agree that the Gid Nosha itself is what's asa. But they argue about taking out the extra tendrils. But the Rabbi Yehuda feel midrabanan shari. According to Rabbi Yehuda, even midrabanan you don't have to take out from underneath the kaf yarach. So we're changing what Rav Sheshes had said, and therefore it's not a kasha. We said in the Mishnah, ha'oichel migid hanashe kazayis sofer gabayim achul ve'en b'kazayis chayiv. If you eat from the gid hanashe kazayis, you get malchus, but if you eat the whole gid hanashe, even if it's less than the kazayis, you chay. Amar Shmuel, le'asur Torah elash ala kaf bilvad. The Torah only asked that which is on the kaf. Now this is not the same thing that we just said before. Before we were talking about how deep, whether you have asur for eating the gid hanashe that's on top of the basar or the gid hanashe that went into the basar. Now we're talking about whether you're going to be chayiv sha'ala kaf, whether how long the gid hanashe is, how long the gid hanashe extends. So Shmuel says the gid hanashe only extends to the part that's opposite this rounded off portion of the basar. But if it extends past that, that's no longer part of the gid hanashe. Shenemer al kaf hayarach, because the Torah says that al ken lo yechel b'nei Yisrael it's gid hanashe asher al kaf hayarach, that's on the rounded portion. But what extends past that is not included. Amar Papa Ketanoi. Papa says, however, this is a machlokes tanoim. It's not. The Rabbanan disagree, and they say the entire length of the gid hanashe, the gid hanashe continues to run past that kaf hayarach, that spooned off portion of the basar, as we'll see in the Gemara, The Chum say that al kaf hayerach is just to identify exactly which sign we're talking about that is the gid hanosha, but it's not to tell you its length. Zok Gemara. What's the brisa where we see this machlokes? Says in the brisa, "Achlu ve'ein by kazayis chayiv." If someone ate an entire gid hanosha and there's even if there's not a kazayis, you chayiv. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Achi Yehei by Kazayis. Rabbi Yehuda says even if you ate the whole thing, so this we don't have this memra from Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, but the Brisa says Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Yehuda Aimer Achi Yehei by Kazayis. Even if you ate an entire Gid Hanosha, it has to be a Kazayis. My time of the Rabbanan. What do the Rabbanan say Yechayev for eating the Gid Hanosha without eating an entire Gid Hanosha without a kazayis? Beryahi or berya b'fnei atzmi. It's its own berya. It's its own full thing. Like we said, like an ant. Yechayev for eating an ant. You also chayev for eating a Gid Hanosha. For Yehuda achila ksiva bei. Yehuda says it says in the pasuk al kin lo yochel. B'nei Yisrael is Gid Hanosha. Since it says you have to eat it, eating requires a kazayis. Less than a kazayis, that's it. So for that, the Torah used the lashon akila. That tells you it must be a kazayis, even though it's an entire object of its own. Rabbanan hahi achila. What do they do with this word achila? The chi isbei arba v'chamisha zeisim v'achal chad kazayis mechayev. The achila is to tell you that even though the Torah says if you eat the Gid Hanosha, so I might think, you must eat the entire Gid Hanosha in order to be chayiv. It's not enough to eat just the kazayis of it. The Torah says, Lo yechlu b'nei Yisrael Gid Hanosha. So it's coming to tell you, even though it's larger than a kazayis, if you eat one kazayis, you're going to be chayiv.
But don't you need lo yachlu for the pashut pshat?
Maybe the Torah could have said it's asur, it's treif, it's the Gid Hanosha is off asur.
Also, I mean, so it could be asur ba'ana, asur for what?
So what you're asking, I think, is taisus. Right? This is essentially, if you want to see this, the kasha in taisus, where he asked this question. The top taisus, right? You have an ant and other shrotzim. The Torah says achila, that it's also to eat them. And still you chayiv with any amount. And we don't dash him because it says achila, that it means you have to eat the whole thing. Yehuda doesn't argue over there that it says achila. That means it has to be the whole thing. Over there, you need us to tell you that if there's 4 or 5 zaysim, you chayev b'chad zayis. Okay, so we're going to say that this is going to be relevant to the later discussion in the Gemara what the teretz is. But the Taisus asks you a question. So the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda me'asher al kaf hayerach nafka. Rabbi Yehuda says, I don't need a pasuk to tell you that even if it's larger than a kazayis, you're chayiv for just eating a kazayis, because the pasuk says asher al kaf hayerach. So it says you're chayiv for eating that part that's on top of the rounded off portion. Even though Rabbi Yehuda holds that the Gid Hanosha, we don't learn from Al Kaf HaYerech that you're only chayiv for the portion that's on the Kaf HaYarech. The Gid HaNasha extends past it. And this is the machlokes that we're referring to between the Rabbanan and the Rabbi Yehuda. He says, even though you ate only opposite the Kaf HaYarech, which is not the entire Gid HaNasha, you're still going to be chayiv. So that tells you that you don't have to eat the entire thing. They say, no, we need Kaf HaYarech, like Shmuel, Damar Shmuel, Kaf HaYarech. That the Kaf HaYarech is telling you that you're only chayiv for eating, the only part that's considered Gid HaNasha is the part that's opposite the Kaf HaYarech. So when the Torah says, yeah, when you eat the opposite of Kaf HaYarech, that's the whole thing. So we need a separate pasuk to tell you that you need not eat the entire Gid HaNasha, just the Kazayas is enough. Verb Yehuda. Yehuda disagrees. He doesn't agree with Shmuel that says it's not really he disagrees with Shmuel. Yehuda's a Tana. But Yehuda does not say like Shmuel is saying in our Gemara that the Torah only asks the Gid HaNasha that's lying opposite the Kaf HaYarech because it says HaYarech, the Kula Yarech. HaYarech means of the entire Yarech, not just opposite the Kaf HaYarech. V'Rabbanan Nahu de Pasha Disura B'Kul Yarech. That the Rabbanan say the HaYarech is coming to tell you a different thing. That's telling you that the Isser is going on a gid that spreads throughout the thigh. Lafuke chitz in the loy. That we had said before that there are two sinus on the thigh of the animal. One is on the inside and one is on the outside. So it's coming to tell you, it's talking about the inside, the pnimi, not the chitzin. Because the chitzin does not extend through the thigh, while the pnimi does. So that's to identify to us that the Gid HaNasha is the Gid HaPnimi, not the Gid HaChitzin. But it does mean the one alakaf hayerach doesn't mean to tell you that the Gid HaNasha extends past the kaf hayerach, but rather, like the Chacham had said before, it's only alakaf. So this din that Shmuel wanted to say alakaf comes out as a machlokes between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda. The less like kaf. We use this kaf that we say off the rounded portion of the basar, but we use it for a different thing to tell you that we don't ask the Gid HaNasha of a bird because it doesn't have the rounded basar. So tomorrow trey kaf ksiv. It says in the pasuk twice kaf. It says al kain lo yochel meisol is Gid HaNasha ashal kaf hayarach ara yomazeh. They don't eat that's on the kaf hayarach, the rounded off portion. He naga b'kaf yarach Yaakov because the malach hit the kaf, the rounded off portion of Yaakov's Gid HaNasha, of the kaf of Yerech when it hit his Gid HaNasha. So we have two kafs. Okay, now we are starting the Mishnah. This next few blot are the dini taruvas, the dinim of mixtures. So if anyone wants to take over Rabbi Twersky's job of answering about what happens when a milchika spoon falls into a fleishig pot, you'd best listen carefully to these gemaras. But I will warn you that certainly you should not paskin based on these gemaras, because there's many Rishonim that learn differently, not just because we're going to learn the Gemara, but there's machlekes Rishonim about how to understand different parts of the Gemara, and we don't paskin necessarily the way we're going to learn the Gemara. We learn the Rashi's pshat, but there are different Rishonim who learn differently. And we paskin like some of those other Rishonim. Zak the Mishnah. Yerech shenisbashul ba'gid. If someone cooked a thigh of an animal and he had not removed the Gid HaNasha, and yeshma b'noser tam, if the Gid HaNasha, which is asa to eat, gives a taste into the thigh, harezu asura. The thigh will be asa. How do you determine whether the Gid Anosha imparted a taste into the thigh of an animal? They both taste like meat. So how do you know the taste of the Gid Anosha in a thigh? Kibasa belefis. It's you would assume like the taste of meat in turnips. If you'd have a big bowl of turnips and you cooked some meat in it, if that amount of Gid Anosha is in the thigh, so let's say if you have 100 pounds of turnips, and 1 pound of meat will make it taste like meat turnips. That you could taste the meat in the turnips. So if you have 1 pound of Gid Anosha in 100 pounds of thigh, it would say it gave a taste. The Gemara is going to say later on. This we're going to say different things have different shiurim. In the end, it's going to end up being that I think the Chachamim Masakin, a share of 1/60th is a nice and tam. But we're going to see different ways of we're going to see a lot of different ways of when we have mimba mina where it's impossible to determine the taste, and they made a uniform amount. But now we're saying that you could this for Gid Hanosha you would do it in this way. Gid Hanosha shenizbashal im hagidim. The first case we were talking about where the Gid Hanosha was cooked in the thigh of the animal, which is mutter. What happened if you had Gid Hanosha that was nisbashal together with other gidim, other sinus? Bisman shemakiroi, when you recognize which one was the Gid Hanosha that you had cooked together with the kosher gidim, b'nois and tam. So then you just remove that puzzle, that aser Gid Hanosha, and the rest of the things you'll do the same test like we did before. To determine if it imparted a flavor into the other gid. V'imlav kulan asur. But if you don't know which one was the Gid Hanosha, so like when we cook the Gid Hanosha in the thigh, you could take out the Gid Hanosha and you could eat the rest of the thighs if it's not nice and tam. But over here, where you have the actual Gid Hanosha mixed in and you can't tell which is it, they're all going to be aser. You're not going to be allowed to eat any of them because it might be the Gid Hanosha. The Gemara later on will explain why that's a problem. Why don't we say that the Gid Hanosha is also batal? Why isn't it batal b'roiv from the rest of the Gidim? Sagt the Gemara. V'haroitev. So in this case, where you cook the Gid Hanosha together with other Gidim, so you're cooking it, it means it's in a liquid. Like cooking means to cook in a liquid. So the liquid, the soup that they were both in, b'nois and tam. We'll have to check it if whether the aser gid is enough to give a tam into it. B'chein chaticha shel nevela. The same thing if you have a chaticha, a piece of nevela, together with other chatichas. B'chein chaticha shel dog tamei, or a piece of fish that's tamei, a non-kosher fish, shnishbasam achatichas, that was cooked with other pieces of meat that are not nevela, or other pieces of fish that are kosher. So bisman shemakirin, if you recognize then b'nois and tam, you have to determine if it gives a tam. If it's so, you take out the puzzle apart. If it doesn't, it was not nice and tam, then the rest of it will be mutter. V'im lav kulan asurim. But if you're not makar, if you don't recognize the nevela, or you don't recognize the dog tame, then all of them are going to be aser. All the chatikas will be aser because you can't tell which is the piece of nevela or which is the non-kosher fish, and therefore it's going to be aser. And again, the haraita b'nais and tam, and the soup is not going to have the same status as the other pieces that you can't tell whether it's the chaticha asur or the chaticha of hatter, the chatichas of hatter. So the soup, you'll say it depends on whether it's nice and tam or not. whether it got a tam from the basar or from the basar nevelo from the tam dag tame. Amar Shmuel, loy shanu al shenis basulba. This din that we said in the Mishnah that you have to do, that you have to see whether the gid anasha is nice and tam, that's only where it was cooked. Aval nitzlaba, but if you roasted the thigh, it wasn't cooked in a pot, but it was roasted over a fire. You take away the basar and you can eat until you reach the gid. It's not. You don't say that the gid gave a tam into the basar. The fire of the direct fire causes the gid to shrink. It gets draws out the liquid and it shrinks into itself, and it doesn't give out a flavor. In fact, if you roast a kid, a baby goat, together with the tchelev that's on the kidneys, it's also to eat it. Even you can't even eat from the tip of the ear, which is very far away from the kidney. We say that the chelev gets all over the entire body of the goat. And this is talking about roasting. So why do we say by the gid anasha, if it's roasted, it's not also b'nois and tam? So shani chelev de mivapeya. Say no, fat is different because fat spreads out into everything. So when you're talking about an isser of chelev, you have to assume that it spreads out throughout the animal, but it doesn't need cooking in order to do so. But the gid anasha, when you took a thigh of an animal that's not fat, the gid anasha is a sainu, that taste doesn't go throughout the animal. So is it true that the chelev spreads out? There was a case in the Beis HaMedrash in Ma'ayin, the Beis HaKnesset Ma'ayin, Begdish Etzala B'chalvai, by a gedi that they roasted together with its fat of its kidney. He said that you can eat the kid and you could peel away the animal and eat it up to the chelev. There's no problem. You don't say that the chelev spread out throughout the animal. So that seems to say that the chelev is the same as the gid anasha, that it doesn't spread throughout. So why did we say that Rav Huna? Why did we say gisha tel b'chal v'yaser? Zok the Gemara, hahu kachosh hava. No, that was a unique case over there where Rabbi Yochanan said that you could eat the rest of the gedi. It was talking about a very desiccated, a very dried out kid, very thin, and it had very little fat and no fat to spread out. It's very strange to us, the idea that you could paskin based on an individual animal and look at it and say that this one is excluded. Yehuda Amar, Kulya b'chal v'havi, b'shari. Rabbi Yehuda says, it's not talking about where you did a whole gedi, a whole goat with its chelev, but rather it was the kidney itself was roasted together with its chelev, and that is mutter because the kidney has a krum, it has a membrane around it, so that membrane keeps the chelev out, and it won't go into that's why the kidney is mutter. Rav and Barav Ada Amar, it was an entirely different case, and I don't know how you transpose the words into this. Kilchis, which is a non-kosher sheretz, a type of small sheketz dog in katanim, a small non-kosher fish, be'ilfas, that was being cooked in meat. It was cooked in a pot of meat, and they also shaylu Rabbi Yochanan v'amalu l'tama. I'm sorry. Yeah, they did. Also shaylu Rabbi Yochanan v'amalu l'tame kfei la'arama. You should get a non-kosher, someone who's a kfei la'arama is a Aramean, a non-Jewish kfila is someone who knows how to cook, an expert. Rashi says, Nachtam oivid kechavim. Nachtam, we always say, is a baker, but it means a professional. Let him taste it to determine whether it's there's a taste of this non-kosher fish in the meat. If he gave a taste, then it's going to be aser. If not, it's going to be mutter. But it has nothing to do with gedi, with roasting a gedi. I don't know how, like I said, I don't know how that case, the gedi shetzali bechelvei, became a fish cooked in a meat. So this kfeil arama is going to come back. It's not clear exactly why we talk about a expert. I guess it means they say either it means that he has to be somebody who would. They just said a normal case. That's the person who you would ask, you ask him a seich lefituma. You're not asking him if he knows why you're asking. We have to worry that he'll try to make you eat something non-kosher. So you ask someone who's a chef, can you taste this? He might not realize it's more likely to be Mesiach Levitumai by such a person. Amar Rava, Mereish Hava Kakashli, Hadetanya, Kadeir Shabissel Ba Basali Vasha Ba Cholav. A pot that you cooked in it meat, you can't cook in it milk. Then bishel, but if you do so, if after you cooked meat in it and it gave a taste into the walls of the pot, and then afterwards you cooked milk in it, b'nois and tam. If there's a tam from the walls of the pot into the milk, it's going to answer the milk. Truma, if you cook truma in a pot, l'yivasha b'chulin, you shouldn't afterwards cook chulin. Ve'em bishel b'nois and tam. And if it cooked in it, again, to determine whether the chulin all gets a din of truma, you have to see if it gave a tam into the chulin. So bishlam a truma tam lakayin. So how do you test if the truma gave a taste into the chulin? You have a kayin taste it, and if he says there's no tam, then the Yisrael is allowed to eat it. You have a way to check it. Alabasa b'cholav man tamle. Who's going to taste basa b'cholav? It's also to taste whether the basar in the walls of the pot gave a taste into the milk, because the yid can't risk that if there is a tam, he was eating basa b'cholav. But Hashdam Rav Yochanan Tzavchina Kfeil Aramai, once Rav Yochanan said that you could ask an expert, non-Jewish person if he detects a taste, Hachanabi Samkina Kfeil Aramai. You'll do the same thing by Basa B'cholav to say whether the pot gave a taste. The Amar Rava, Amar Rabbanan, the Taima, the Rabbanan sometimes say that you check by tasting, Amar Rabbanan B'kfila, and sometimes you're having a yid tasted, and sometimes you have a kfeila, like a kfeila aramai, an expert non-Jewish tasted. And sometimes the Chacham say it goes by 1 in 60. Hilkach something which is that's 1 min into another thing that's not the same taste, and it's mutter to eat, like we said, like truma with chulin, that you could get a kind to taste it. The time you actually taste it to test whether it gave a tam. The isura, but if it's something like basa b'chalav b'kvela, you have to ask an Aramean. But let's say you have like the gid hanasha with the basar, that they're both the same type of thing, so that you can't detect the taste. Inami the or if you had something that does give a taste, and it's also, but you don't have access to a guy, you don't have the ability to have a guy taste it, b'shishim. And that you use an amount of shishim. Okay, we're going to have to stop over here. And b'li neder, I'll see you tomorrow.